What's up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Ravi Wadan, and in today's video, I want to talk about whether or not you should lease or buy a Tesla Model Y in January of 2025. Now, this really isn't a black or white answer. It really depends on your situation. It depends on how long you plan on keeping the car, and it depends on whether or not you qualify for the $7,500 EV tax credit. But we will dive into all of that later in this video. What we'll do in the first part of this video is we'll head over to Tesla's website and we'll kind of break down the Tesla Model Y long-range all-wheel drive trim lease deal in detail. We'll go over the mileage allowances, we'll go over the lease terms, we'll go over the buyout price, and I'll give you lots of little helpful tips and tricks along the way. So if you're in the market for a Tesla Model Y, I think you'll get a lot of value from this video. And then in the second part of this video, what we'll do is we'll quickly run my 1.25% rule of leasing on the Tesla Model Y, and I'll show you why I think it's a good lease deal in terms of value. And then at the last part of this video, what I'll do is talk about whether you should lease or buy a Tesla Model Y. And it really depends on your situation, and I'll break down those situations in detail. And hopefully that helps you determine whether or not you should lease or buy a Tesla Model Y in January of 2025. So if that sounds good to you, please be sure to like this video and please be sure to follow. But with that, let's go ahead and jump into the computer behind me. All right, here we are on the Tesla website. I'm just gonna click on Order Model Y, and then I'm gonna select Lease and select on Long Range All-Wheel Drive, which has already been selected. Now, Tesla makes this really easy. Just before we move forward, I'm not going to change the color. I'm gonna leave it at Stealth Gray, which as you can see is included in the price. If you want different colors, they do add money to the overall price of the car. I'm gonna leave it with the standard Gemini wheels, black interior, no self-driving. You guys can spec it out however you'd like. I'm just gonna leave it bare bones, long range, all-wheel drive. Now, I'm gonna uncheck this box that says include estimated gas savings of $100 a month. And you'll see that you can lease this long range all-wheel drive for $399 a month with $2,999 down. It's a 36-month lease that allows for 10,000 miles a year. And this $2,999 down is just the cash down. It doesn't include things like tax, title, and license. But, Tesla does a really good job of breaking this all down. So we'll click on Edit Terms and Savings. And what you're going to see here is a breakdown, right? It says $399 a month with the same $2,999 cash down payment. Now, what I like to do here is include taxes and fees, and that way you get a much more to the point, much more realistic, honest numbers, right? So more accurate numbers, I should say. I couldn't think of the word. So we have a really accurate estimate here. So with the same $2,999 down payment, 36-month term, 10,000 miles, your monthly payment is $450 a month. And as you can see here, when we include taxes and fees, the actual due at signing amount is $6,311. And the reason is because the $2,999 is just your cash down payment to lower the price of the lease. Remember, you have to pay taxes on rebates, you have to pay license and registration fees, and then you have to pay any dealer fees or Tesla fees that Tesla has. And, here in the state of Washington or in Seattle where I live, this $7,500 EV tax credit, you're going to have to pay taxes on it. So about 10% taxes on it. So about $750. And then, license registration, you're probably looking at about another $1,000. And then you got Tesla fees and all that good stuff. And as you can see, it adds up to about $3,311 on top of the $3,000 down payment. So I hope that clarifies things, because a lot of people, when they see this down payment, that they think that that's all you need to put down, and then they get surprised when Tesla or a dealer says, hey, you actually have to put down $6,311. So just wanted to make that clear and wanted to explain the difference. Now, if we read the fine print, before we do that, with Tesla, you can actually select your mileage. So as you can see, if you do 12,000 miles a year or 15,000 miles a year, the payment will dynamically adjust. I'm going to leave it at 10,000 miles a year. And if you wanted to do a 24-month lease, you can see that the payment adjusts as well. The 24-month lease isn't as favorable as the 36-month lease. Now, what you're going to see is that for the lease penalty, it's 25 cents a mile. So if you go over 10,000 miles a year, that's what you're going to have to pay. So it's much cheaper to just do 12 or 15,000 miles a year up front rather than having to pay that 25 cents a mile. You'll also see that your first month's due at signing amount includes your down payment, it includes the first month's payment, and it includes the acquisition fee of $695. And you'll see that leased vehicles are subject to a $395 disposition fee at return, and this is standard across all manufacturers. And now, finally, with Teslas, you can actually, you have the option to purchase this vehicle for $29,628. So for those of you that are new to Tesla leasing, Tesla didn't offer this buyout option up until about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So you had to turn your Tesla lease back in. You didn't have a buyout option, but now you do have that buyout or purchase option at the end of the lease term. Now, if we click on, so the cool thing with leasing is that everybody gets the $7,500 EV tax credit, like regardless of your income, right? But when you finance a Tesla, you're going to have to abide by their income restrictions because let's say if we pay cash here, you have to, and here's the criteria. So if you were to buy this Tesla, in order to get the $7,500 federal tax credit, you have to make less than $300,000 if you're a married couple filing jointly. You have to make less than $225,000 as a head of household and less than $150,000 for all filers. Now, if you lease, this criteria does not apply. Anybody can get the $7,500 tax credit. You can make $600,000 a year as a married couple filing jointly and still get that $7,500 federal tax credit. So for that reason, if you are over any of these thresholds and you don't get the $7,500 federal tax credit by purchasing the Tesla, I think right off the bat, it makes more sense to lease it. So for those of you, the high income earners, I think leasing this Tesla just makes a lot more sense right off the bat. And then you do have these price caps. So if the MSRP is more than the stated amounts here, you also will not get the $7,500 EV tax credit. But I think the moral of the story for this section of the video, at least, is that if you are over these income thresholds, it just makes more sense to lease the Tesla. Now what I want to do in this part of the video is show you why I think this Tesla Model Y is a good lease deal in terms of value by running my 1.25% rule of leasing on this Tesla. So let me just get the numbers back up. I'm going to click on include estimated taxes and fees. And then I'm going to reset this calculator and we'll run my 1.25% rule of leasing on this Tesla. Now, whenever you run this calculation and you get a number under 1.5%, that's a good lease deal in terms of value. And typically it makes more sense to lease that particular car if it's under 1.5% than to purchase that particular car or to finance it. If you get a number under 1.25%, that's a great lease deal. That's even better. If you get a number under 1%, that's an amazing lease deal. And that 1%, sub 1% lease deals are usually reserved for electric vehicles. So let's go ahead and take the $6,311 that's due at signing that you can see right down here. And what we'll do is we'll subtract the monthly payment from that amount since it's included in the due at signing amount. And that gives me a total due at signing of $5,861. Now I'll divide this by 36 since this is a 36-month lease, and that breaks that due at signing amount into 36 equal parts. I get $162. Now what I'll do is I'll add the $450 monthly payment back in. And that $450 monthly payment is inclusive of sales tax. So with leases, not only do you have to pay taxes on the rebates, but you also have to pay sales tax on the payment in most states. And this gives you an effective monthly payment of $612 a month. Now, this is assuming zero down. I rolled in all fees, all of the money down, all the taxes into the monthly payment. And this gives you a true monthly cost of the vehicle. And it's a really great way to kind of compare apples to apples and compare leases to other leases. Now what I'll do is take this $612 monthly payment and divide it by this vehicle's MSRP, which is $47,990. Let me just double check that. Yeah, it's $47,990. $47,990. 0.0128. I'll multiply this by 100 to make it a percentage, and you get 1.27 or 1.28%. So as I mentioned, under 1.5%, good lease deal. Under 1.25%, great lease deal. Under 1%, amazing lease deal. And this Tesla Model Y comes in at 1.27 or 1.28%. So in my opinion, it's a really good lease deal. It's right on the cusp of good and great. And for that reason, if you're considering leasing this car, I think it makes a lot of financial sense to do so versus financing this car. But now let's break down whether you, in your particular situation, should lease or finance this Tesla Model Y and what things you should consider. All right, so let's talk about whether or not you should lease or finance a Tesla Model Y based on your particular situation. Now, the first thing that I want to say, and I mentioned this in the video, is that if you don't qualify for the $7,500 EV tax credit because you earn, too high of an income, then you should just lease this Tesla because you're just leaving out $7,500 in free money, right? That's kind of like the tax loophole for high income earners to get the $7,500 tax credit on EVs and plug-in hybrids. Now, the second scenario or second persona that I want to cover is someone who qualifies for the $7,500 EV tax credit if they were to buy it, but they don't plan on keeping the Tesla long-term, like longer than 5 years. Then I think you shouldn't finance it. I think you should lease the vehicle. Is because, you will be protected from downside depreciation risk because you'll know your depreciation. And then at the end of your lease term, if you really want to keep the car or if you have positive equity in the car, you have the option to buy the Tesla. Now, that wasn't the case about a month ago, but now you have the option to buy the Tesla. So if you're not planning on keeping it long term, I think you should lease a Tesla Model Y. That's what I would do. And then the third scenario or third persona that I want to cover is someone who doesn't plan on keeping their Model Y long term. And by long term, I mean 5 years or longer. Then, of course, you should lease the Tesla Model Y. And again, it saves you from the downside depreciation risk because, as you know, Teslas really depreciate at a rapid rate. So what happens is when sometimes people finance these cars and then they go to trade it in 3 to 4 years later, not only have they been paying a higher monthly payment than they would have had they leased the car, but then they realize that they're $3 or $4 or $5, $6, $7,000 upside down. So then that total cost of ownership over that 3 to 5 year period becomes extremely high. And that's why leasing makes a lot of sense, right? That total cost of ownership over 3 years is much lower than financing this particular car. And then if you really want to keep the car long term, you do have the buyout option. And another reason I think, another thing that's going to put more downward pressure on the Tesla Model Y, at least this model, is that there is a new Tesla Model Y that could be released anytime in the near future. We don't know if it's a month out, we don't know if it's 6 months out, but there is a Tesla Model Y that's coming out. It's the all new Juniper Tesla Model Y. You guys have probably heard about it. And if you haven't, it's fully redesigned, new interior, new exterior. And as soon as that comes out, it's going to put a lot of downward pressure on the depreciation of the current Model Y. And for that reason, I think leasing it makes a lot of sense because you'll be protected from that downside risk. So I hope that was helpful. If you guys have any other questions about the Tesla Model Y lease, please let me know in the comments section below. And please use my referral link if you're thinking about buying a Tesla. You can save up to $1,000 whether you finance or lease any Tesla. So financial knowledge is power. Please like and follow for more.